Hey guys, this is Aaron Schober from Sword Carolina. So I would like to talk to you today about a topic that we usually call in a real fight or in a real sword fight. Right, so this has become almost cliche or really a running gag in my school because it's hard to go a practice without actually finding myself uttering these words. But in a real sword fight, you would do this. But we need to put some qualifiers on that, right? So first of all, where do I hear this? I already alluded, we see it in our training. Someone wants to do something, we're like, well, this makes sense at slow speed. I'm like, well, if in a real sword fight, or if these were sharp swords, maybe not the best idea. But I also hear it a lot in regards to tournaments. People want to be sure that others realize that a tournament or a competitive fight is not the same as the martial art. And that's true. I think it is important to make that distinction, right? A sport can teach you some really good skills. We recommend it, we participate in it, but it's not the same as the martial art. But none of your practice, none of your training is the same as an actual fight, right? You don't train for a real sword fight with a real sword fight, because then people die, people get disfigured, they get dismembered, maimed, you get thrown in jail for murder, this type of thing. So none of our training is actually real. And no one has ever trained for a real sword fight with actual real fighting that I'm aware of. You lose training partners or you lose your own life, and it's hard to get better at that point. So we work on drills, we work on competitive, sportive events. These are teaching us skills that we put together for the real fight, but we're not doing the real fight. Another thing, well, what is a real fight? A lot of miscommunication can happen because in HEMA, we cover a broad number of topics, broad number of situations. So if I say a real sword fight, I could be thinking of knights in armor on the battlefield fighting, and that's my interpretation of a real sword fight. And then I see these guys running around in their fencing masks, and I think they're just playing a game. That could be my perspective. I could also be seeing a real sword fight as someone who's in a duel. Someone who's fighting rapier and dagger, they're fighting in a duel to the death or a judicial duel. And that's my concept of a real sword fight. I could also be thinking street fight. I'm walking down the street, with my sword, and I get jumped, and now I'm in a fight, and I have to fight for my life, and I'm gonna do whatever I can to get out of it, where anything goes, and there's no rules, and that's my idea of a real fight. There's lots of different scenarios. I would even throw in, sportive fighting to the first blood. This would be not trying to kill the other person, and there would be rules involved, but could that be a real sword fight? Yeah, depending on what your definition of what a real fight is. That's where a lot of miscommunication comes, because HEMA is actually a pretty broad term. There's a lot of things HEMA is not, but it covers a lot of ground too. So, nothing that we do is a real sword fight. Tournaments are not a real sword fight, but while it's important for us to understand that, I want us to also make sure that we're not using this in a negative way. So the thing we want to watch out for and be careful of, if I'm talking about, this is a real sword fight or this is not a real sword fight, we want to be careful that we're not using it as an excuse. So even at our own study and steel tournament, I had someone come up who's a good fencer. I've fought with him many times. He's very skilled, but he performed poorly at the event. This is a common thing. Competitive fighting is its own skill set, right? He performed poorly, but he came up to me afterwards and was comparing himself versus the guy who won the tournament and saying that he was obviously better, and if this was a real sword fight, he would have won, type of thing. In my mind, you're using it as an excuse. I mean, you could be right. Maybe in a real sword fight, maybe your techniques would have worked, but you're not doing a real sword fight, right? we were doing a fake sword fight, and you lost. So that's something to keep in mind. If you're losing, if something goes wrong and you lose a fight, that's not the time to criticize the winner. That's the time to improve yourself, right? I always learn more from my losses than I do from my wins. But if I just make excuses for my losses, then I'm not going to learn anything, right? So, and that's another thing. If you can't win a fake sword fight, you're not really qualified to say that you would win the theoretical real sword fight, right? That's some salve to put on your bruised ego. So we do need to watch out for that, and that's human nature, right? Everyone is going to experience that to some effect, which is why I'm bringing it up. We need to be aware of it. The other way I see it being used negatively is in putting down someone else's style. So what I teach here, I teach Lichtenauer's Kunst des Fechtens, but what am I really teaching? I'm teaching my style of it. Because everything that we do here, everything that you do in your school or by yourself is your interpretation of it, right? And despite what people say, a lot of people are not open to other interpretations. So that's the other thing you gotta watch out for. Well, like, this person's doing this, it's like, that's fine for them. In a real fight, my stuff would work and their stuff would not work. Gotta watch out, because you're not gonna be in a real fight. You're not gonna get into a real sword fight. And so everything that we would be saying there, we don't ever have to prove it. So it's a very deceptive and pleasant delusion, because now I don't have to prove what I'm saying. I can just say it and take some sort of moral authority, but then it'll never be put to the test, so I'll never have to prove if I'm right or not. So, am I doing real sword fighting here? No, of course not. I'm doing a drill. Our term is real sword fighting? No. We train for the martial art. We practice what we can. We try to get as close to the real thing as possible. But we have to maintain that humbleness of spirit to know that we are not going to achieve 100% realism or 100% authenticity, right? So keep a good attitude, keep a clear mindset of we are doing the best we can, but don't delude yourself into thinking that you're doing something that you're not. So thanks for watching this, guys. I appreciate you. Please share this if you got something out of it. Feel free to comment. We do like discussions here. Just keep it respectful to anyone that might disagree with you. So appreciate you guys. You guys rock. We'll see you.